Right. So I want us to talk about the context of care, right? I will look at a number of elements. For today, I will look at part of the elements that are in the context of care, the context in which we provide care. The devotion that we had this evening actually helped us to have this context. Christ says, cast unto me. This is Peter who is saying, cast unto me, all your cares upon me. So what is the context of care? What do we find ourselves? What situations do we find ourselves in when we are providing care? So this is what we really want to talk about, the context of pastoral care. So let me share my screen and then we get to that. So this is the context of doing pastoral care and counseling. The first thing that we ought to notice and that we ought to understand is that there is so much exposure to catastrophic events. This exposure, before we would have news coming at a snail pace, right? If you understand now, right now, like in the COVID era, we used to have news coming at a snail pace before the advent of internet. But now there is so much exposure to catastrophic event. When the 9/11 event took place, the whole world knew that there is the 9/11 event. So such that we are, the members that we are ministering to, the people that we are providing pastoral care and counseling to, are exposed to catastrophic events. And let me just give an example. Econet Wireless used to be sending messages. You remember, it used to be sending messages of how many people have died of the coronavirus, how many people are infected, how many people are, and what that did to people. What did it do to people? Okay, so that I slow down and look. What did that do to people as they were receiving those news? What was happening? What happened? Yes.
Many from the COVID couldn't.
Okay.
I remember some individuals copying phone because they're now suffering the different.
Okay. So, oops, the light has fallen. Okay. So, all right. Okay. So that caused a lot of problems to people because they were exposed to so much of these events and they couldn't cope. So they stopped. Those of us who have had our brothers and our sisters having infected with the coronavirus, some of them have exited some groups. What's the reason for that? If they were in certain WhatsApp groups, they just exited. They said, no, I can't be in this WhatsApp group. I can't be in this WhatsApp group. What was the reason for that? Okay, all right. All right, the exposure to these events causes so much anguish to exhibit itself in those that are in need of our care. And consequently, these people could not really continue to expose themselves. So they thought to themselves, it is better for me to remove all the groups that I am in, because you'll hear that brother so-and-so is no more, sister so-and-so is no more, and I am still suffering from that same condition. And because of that, they thought to themselves, I think the best thing is to avoid this exposure to these catastrophic events that are taking place. And so, as we are ministering, we need to take cognizance of the fact that the world has broken people who are struggling with so many untoward circumstances. And people have got life questions that are emanating from the suffering of the care seekers that they confront. These life questions emanating from the suffering of the care seekers confront the 21st century clergy. The 21st century clergy are exposed to this, and they have questions that are coming from people. The song that we got in our devotion, the question is, does Jesus care? Does Jesus care? Maybe in a healthcare context, some patients connect their clinical problems to issues like being bewitched, issues like having a generational curse, issues like being punished by God. And some mental health cases are attributed to evil spirits. In the writings of Patel, and then Mutambirwa and Niwatiwa, they 1995, in their article that they wrote in 1995, page 221, they pointed out that clergy and traditional healers are the preferred source of emotional liberation, since the sufferers see their pain as a result of spiritual matters. You see, as clergy, we are preferred. People prefer to come to us because people think their problems are spiritual. And because people think their problems are spiritual, they prefer to come to clergy. And they also prefer to go to traditional healers because they think their solutions are not physical, so to speak, but their solutions are spiritual solutions. You find that someone can call someone with a mental health challenge like depression, before they go to a psychologist, they can come to a pastor. You see, when the pastor is not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, the reason why they are coming to a pastor first is because they subscribe. The context in which we are operating in is that people subscribe challenges that they are having to either being cursed by God or bewitched by men, or having some spiritual challenge that has caused them to get into this. Okay, any questions at the moment before we continue? So we are laying the context in which we are operating in. The context in which we operate from is a context of exposure, number one, to catastrophic events. And number two, it is a context which is highly spiritual, because of the people that we are serving. They can be a traditional, rooted in their African traditional religion. And when they are baptized, they don't leave their being African. Their being African continues with them. You will see this in so many things that they do. For instance, when death strikes, the theological training, the theological teachings that the dead do not know anything stop existing because it has struck. And we shift from that phase of taking our theology, maybe our espoused theology, the theology that we value, then it ceases from becoming home, or it ceases from becoming a source of comfort, a source of consolation, and a source of strength. And in that regard, that causes a lot of challenges when we are ill-equipped. So the reason for this course is to equip us with tools that will empower us to be able to assist people or that they may be having a dual allegiance, and they can be still stuck in their traditional religion, and they are still having Christianity. They are exposed to catastrophic events. They are thinking they are bewitched. They are thinking that, no, God has cursed me. They are ascribing everything that they are involved in to some generational curse that has been perpetuated from elder, from grandfather to father to great grandfather, and it's continuing on and on. And that context it causes a lot of challenges if we are not equipped. As we shall see with the lessons, as we shall proceed, we will see how we can be able to deal with this conundrum that we find ourselves in. All right. So, and the worldview that people are the people that we deal with is very important. We are going to look at that. Right. Can someone read that? Mngani, can you read that for me? If it's clear to you.
There.
Yes. Okay.
Adherence to one's faith is a function of true discipleship.
Okay.
Its breadth and its depth is revealed. It's revealed where there's a picture there. It's revealed by the disciples' response to difficult circumstances affecting his or her various facets of life. In illness, his or her discipleship will either be regressive or progressive.
Okay.
This could be the reason why Jesus spent more time in healing the sick than sermon delivery. He dealt with diseases in a holistic approach because of its systemic effect of the disciple. Hope I get what is correct.
Yes, yes. Thank you. So we are looking at people that are having of the context in which you are operating from is a context where you have Christians who are your members, and the adherence to their faith, keeping hold of their faith, is the function of true discipleship. So now, to test the breadth, to test the depth of the disciple, it is seen in difficult circumstances. And these difficult circumstances may be affecting their various of life. It can be a spiritual issue. It can be a psychological issue. It can be a sociological issue. And disease in itself, this is another context in which we will be providing pastoral care. Disease in itself has got a way of affecting all these facets. It is systemic in its nature. Okay. It is systemic in its nature. It will affect all of these assets and cause a lot of challenges when not dealt properly with. And so it is very important to understand exactly the impact of disease, okay, in providing care. So the other context is thinking about the cases that our members are exposed to. The other context is the exposure to catastrophic events. The other context is their thought that I am cursed, I'm having generational curses. Then the other context is the context of illness. And illness has a way of affecting the body, affecting the whole system. It can sabotage the whole system. Allow me to borrow a medical term and utilize it for the purposes of our lesson today. So I will use the term systemic from the medical terms. So in medical terms, when a disease is systemic, it affects the whole body rather than a certain portion. That is in medical terms. So it is in the same way, poor health sometimes sabotages the various aspects of life. It becomes systemic in its harmfulness. That's what disease does. It is systemic in its effects. So I want us to look at the systemic nature of illnesses. And this is the context upon which we will be operating, right? Just to make it clear, it affects the social connection. Illness will affect the mental and emotional wellness. Illness will also affect the spiritual connection. Let me just slow down and break these things down. Right. When a patient is not attending church, the physical absence from church is actually disconnecting that individual from church. Okay. And then the patient's conceptualization of the social definition of their condition. Okay, I think this is a mouthful I need to break down. When the patient's conceptualization of their social definition is how the society is defining their condition. Think of the lepers in the time of old. What they were meant to shout, unclean, unclean. So the social definition was that if you are a leper, you are unclean. Those of you who know or who have relatives that have suffered from coronavirus have actually seen how they are alienated from others. Socially, they are separated from others, and not only separated from others. And one thing that happens is the social definition of their suffering is what stigmatizes them. So we will minister to people that are having some stigma, and they are suffering from that stigma, and that stigma causes them to cower away, and they are withdrawn, and they are not able to face life squarely, and they are not able to deal with the issues of life because of the social definition of their condition. Okay, and let me give another example. When HIV/AIDS came, in the advent of HIV and AIDS, there were so many misconceptions that were there, and they are still there. And people really, when somebody declared, I am HIV positive, eyes would be bloodshot, eyes would be raised, and people would be saying, I can't be close to this individual who is HIV positive. And so in providing pastoral care, in providing care to that kind of individual, you are that already is socially alienated because of the illness that they are suffering from. Okay, let me paint another picture that is coming from the Bible. You will remember the woman that had an issue of blood. Speaking to pastors here, that woman that had an issue of blood, because of her condition, she could not come to people because according to the holiness code, she was unclean. Everything touched, it turned out to be unclean. The house that she was in was unclean. So the social definition of her condition was that she is unclean. And even today, those who are having coronavirus, the social definition of that can be, I am unclean. I am unclean. So this is the context that health challenges pose upon those that we are ministering to. They find themselves in a situation where they have to withstand the social labels from the individuals that are needed. Another issue is the mental and emotional wellness. So the systemic nature of illnesses will affect the social connection. They will affect the mental and emotional wellness. They will affect the spiritual connection. And because they will affect these three facets, in the mental aspect, mental affliction may affect bedside discipleship as the patient's judgment may be marred by anguish. The essence of spiritual things and an appetite for godliness may be reduced. Bruce actually saw emotional brokenness as a wall that stands between the sinner and his God, blurring the relationship and blocking spiritual connectedness. So consequently, spiritual growth is thwarted and a sense of worth is depleted. So is a tendency of affecting various aspects of life. Okay, so this is the context of providing pastoral care, the context of providing ministry. This is where we find ourselves in. Okay, the other context is skewed health-seeking behaviors. Some of us may have heard, okay, maybe most of us may have heard the time of fungus. Who remembers the time of fungus? When fungus was meant to be healing everything. And some of us may have heard the time, okay, maybe let's come close to our time. Zumbani used to be, it got on the, it was the coronavirus healing thing. And I don't have any comments on. You will remember there was a time of stamata. Some of you may remember stamata. It used to be called that which heals anything. And some of you may remember garlic. And I'm not undermining those, and I'm not those. They are skewed behaviors of seeking medical attention. And these skewed behaviors of seeking medical attention impact the way in which the individual will impact the way in which the individual that is seeking medical care will try to adjust to the challenges that they are facing, be they sociological, be they psychological, be they mental, intellectual, be they emotional. These individuals, because they have sought other means and they have been provided with counsel that is coming from so many other people, they may find it very difficult to adjust depending on what means they have sought for in seeking care. Okay, so these skewed behaviors are caused by the following. Nothing happens without a cause. Okay, nothing happens without a cause. And in an African context, everything has a cause. And also there is the value that is attached to life and the deflection of cases. These are the three elements that cause skewed health-seeking behaviors, which then create the context of operation or muddy the context of operation or cause the context of operation to be very difficult. So in their pursuit of well-being, patients may violate their long-held scriptural convictions. In concurrence to this, Mbiti pointed out that they resort to both hospitals and medicine men without a feeling of contradiction. They might go only secretly to medicine men or follow his treatment. That is what Mbiti says. He points out that because of the situations that people find themselves in, they may resort to doing two things. They may follow medicine men, and they may secretly follow medicine men, and then at the same time go to hospitals. And these skewed health-seeking behaviors may have propositions that make our context of operation complicated. So this is the context in which we operate in as we are providing care. And number one, the exposure to catastrophic events is difficult. It causes pain, misery, and war. Number two, there is the thought of being bewitched among people that we are operating in, we are working amongst. Secondly, some have the notion that their suffering is a result of being cursed by God, or God has scorned them, or God has frowned at them. Number three, some think that there are generational curses that are coming from their family. And so as you are sitting as a pastoral counselor, as you are providing care, you will find that it is very, very complicated to provide care, because already this individual is saying, I am cursed. Whatever you may be saying, it doesn't matter because I am cursed. You may be trying to provide care, but this individual is saying, I am bewitched. So what I need is the removal of whoever cast a spell upon me. This is what I need. So I have come here and I need to be helped. So, and then the other context that we spoke about today is the context of illness, which then causes 3 or 4 problems: a social disconnectedness and spiritual disconnectedness, maybe spiritual relapses, and also emotional turmoil and anguish. These issues come and they affect us. And the last context in which we find ourselves in and we find ourselves operating from is a context where we find that there are skewed health-seeking behaviors where people say nothing happens without a cause. And the value that they attach to life then causes them to say, okay, I just can't be going to the doctor only. I need someone to help me. And also, they may be in need of deflection of these curses. For today, I just want to need somebody to ask questions